The title is Hanami, New Ruby Web Framework.
Hello. Hello. 1 week ago, I had a 10 hours flight from Moscow to Tokyo, and it was nice, really. Just 10 hours. And on this week in Japan, I can say that Japan is awesome. Really, it's super strange for me because I'm from other world, and I was super excited about Japan. And on this week, I learned some things about Japan. First thing, it's one ramen per day. It's normal. Uh, who love ramen? Any? Oh, so many people. Okay. Uh, Bonita asked me how many ramen did I eat already, and I can say that more than one. Next thing is juice pack. In Russia, we have a special pack for juice. It's look like this, and I was super. It was really strange for me when I come to 7-Eleven and find this. If you don't know, it's a sake, and it's strange for me. And the last thing which I learned in Hanami, it's tax-free. Oh, I'm sorry, in Japan it's tax-free. Usually when you use tax-free, you pay something, and after that you get money in airport, for example. But here you pay without some taxes and get something like this. And yes, they pin the receipt to my passport. And it was super strange for me, and now I have super strange passport. But anyway, my name is Anton, and you can find some links about me, and you need to know about me only two things. First things, I love sticker. I have Hanami stickers, and if you have other stickers, let's trade. And other thing, I really love open source. And maybe that's why I'm Hanami core developer, and also my commits you can find in different repositories like Ruby Rails, Crystal, Dry, Rome, and etc. And also, I have some social activity. I'm one of curator Moscow Ruby community. We have meetups and drink ups. And if you want to visit Moscow or Russia, please send me email or tweet me. And today we'll talk about Hanami. Hanami is a Ruby web framework. And every time when I talk about Hanami, I try to explain what Hanami mean. But in Japan, I just drop these slides. And if you don't know, and if you're not from Japan, I can say that Hanami is mean when you flower when you're watching flower blossom. And but okay, today we will talk about Ruby and web frameworks. This framework was created by a developer from Italy. His name is Luca Guidi, and here you can find his GitHub. And the first commit was created 4 years ago. And as you can see, Hanami is a really young framework. And core team have 8 people. And let's talk about general ideas. So I think we have to discuss general ideas first of all. And if you talk about ideas, we need to set one problem. And the biggest problem which try Hanami to solve is long-term maintenance. Because if you have really old project, you can understand that sometimes to add new feature or maybe refactor some code, it's really really difficult and complicated task for you. And Hanami try to solve this problem with some different things. For example, it's modularity. It's mean two things in my mind. First thing, it's Hanami consists of Hanami includes 10 different gems for everything like model, view, and etc. And you can drop any gems and use other. For example, you can drop Hanami model and use active record if you want, or maybe just ROM or SQL or what you want. And second idea, it's Hanami provides a simple way to split your logic, your business logic and other logic. The next idea is simplicity and lightweight. I think that simple tool provides you start working on production application faster. And framework is just a tool, and don't make a cult of it. The next idea is architecture sound. If you're going to use Hanami, you gain more freedom, and you don't have to think how you can fix your logic and your framework. And super important thing is zero monkey patching. And for explain why it's important, I found one quiz. It's you can try to solve this quiz. And what do you think? This method from Rails or Ruby? Is it from Rails? Uh, Please. Okay. Is it from Ruby? Yeah. Guys, please. More feedback. It's duplicable with question mark. Okay, it's from Rails. And yes, in this case, you can see that sometimes you don't understand it's Rails or maybe Ruby or maybe other framework, and I think it's a problem. And we will talk about it later. And the last thing which Hanami provides, it's a full Threadsafe. You can use Puma or Unicorn with anything, and all will work correct. And also Sidekick too. And if you want to note one thing from my presentation, please not only this thing. Hanami is not Rails, and Rails is not a Hanami. It's absolutely different things which try to solve sometimes similar problems. It's just web development. And I think it's a stupid idea to compare these frameworks together, but of course we will compare them later. And let's talk about typical part of any web applications. I think that typical web application include two different type of logic. First type, it's a data flow. What does it mean? It's something which provides you some work with getting and sending response to user, and I don't know, it's actions, view, and JSON serializators, for example. And in Hanami, we have container architecture. Someone know what it means? Okay, it means that we have one project. It's a Hanami project. And in this project, you can find some different applications. For example, admin application, web application, API application. And all this application is just controller and view logic. And also we have business logic which shared with all this application in one project. And why it's important and why it's a good idea? Because sometimes you need to use different instances for your Hanami project. And for example, in one case, you want to protect one of application. For example, you have admin application, and you want to use only admin application in private cloud. And in other projects, in other instance of your project, you want to disable admin application for all users. And with Hanami, you can boot your application with specific, boot your project only with specific applications. And other case why it's a good feature, for example, you have you want to add more just a second. You need to so for example, you have a API application, and you understand that you need a new instance only for API application. And with Hanami, you can start in your memory only API application without any unnecessary data. And if you look into Hanami project in applications folder, you will see something like this. It's different folders. It's, you can see admin and web applications here. And in admin application and in web application too, you can find some controllers, template, and view objects. We will talk about it later, but just look on it. So let's talk about business logic. Business logic, it's all logic, all business logic in Hanami you can find in library folder. And you can find here model. Hanami use repository pattern, it's something different instead of active record. And in repository patterns, we have entity and repositories. We'll talk about it later, but you can find repositories here. You can find some interactors or mailers or some other stuff like service objects, matchers, and what you want. And I told that Hanami is modular web framework, and Hanami, it's a mix of 10 different frameworks. The first 5 you can find on this slide. It's like a router, controller, module, Hanami, which provide all command line interface around these gems. And other 5, it's validations, helpers, view, and etc., etc. And I know that on the first time, all this stuff looks difficult, but let's talk about difference with other frameworks, and maybe it will be better for understanding. And let's talk about rec application. Typical rec application is just one class with one public method call. And in this public method call, you can use, you need to return specific hash or a specific array with specific data in this array. And if you look on Hanami routers, you'll see that Hanami uses this idea with rec applications. You can create, you can use this rec application and mount it to specific path of your application, and after that, it will work. If we talk about if we talk about Sinatra, Sinatra is super great. I really love Sinatra, and you can see this syntax. It's simple, and in Hanami we can use block definition for our routes too. And let's talk about Rails in Hanami. I told that compare of these frameworks is a stupid idea because Rails try to solve one problems, Hanami try to solve other problems, but in general it's web frameworks which try to implement MVC pattern, and that's why I think that if we compare these frameworks by one of part of MVC, it will be good. And let's start from controllers. In Rails, we have one big class with all endpoints, all actions. It can be any name for actions and etc., etc. And also we have some private methods like user params for validating or something like this. In Hanami, we have absolutely different way to work with your actions. In Hanami, each action is separate class with only one public method call. And also in each action in Hanami, you have specific, you have validation schema for your params. And it means that if you have some params, you can validate it before putting these params into model. If you look into module, we will see that in Rails we have one big class again with some gems like, I don't know, some Gravastic, and these gems include some logic into this model. Also, we have some callbacks. Usually it's 3, 5, 10, 11 callbacks in one model. We have some logic, association logic between tables in database. And also we have validations here. And of course, we have class methods for some queries and instance methods for some logic with our data. And if you look into Hanami, we will see that Hanami use ROM. ROM is Ruby object mapper. You can check it on this link, and we create a repository pattern, and it means that our model consists of 2 different objects. First object, it's a immutable data structure, which call it entity. It's a just object. I don't know. Maybe you know Virtus or dry struct or something like this. Entity is similar, and you can create a new entity object, like here user with ID number 1. And if you try to change this ID, you will get error because this object is immutable object. And other part of Hanami models, it's a repository. Repository, it's a special class which know absolutely all about your database. It can be SQL, or it can be SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, or can be Mongo or something else. And you can see some associations and specific methods for finding user by his name. And here we use ROM relations, and you can find that this syntax look like typical SQL code, SQL syntax. And of course, you need to analyze repository object, and after that, you can work with this repository object like typical Ruby object. If you talk about view, we will see that in Rails we have view, but it's partials and not view. It's just HTML page, ERB or Slim or HAML page, and Rails helpers. And usually this Rails helper is model, and sometimes you can get some problems because in two different helpers you have one method, and in this case you can have a conflict of this method. In Hanami we have view objects. It's Ruby classes, isolated Ruby classes, and also we have templates. And Hanami support all templates which you want, like Slim, HAML, ERB, and what you want. And the last part of my compression, it's assets, but unfortunately I don't like this part, and this is why I leave it as a elective for independent view. Sorry, guys. Let's talk about pros and cons of Hanami. And first pros, it's no magic. Really, for users, it's no magic because you can see. Let's see on action again. One class with one public method call, and how we will test this code. We just create a new instance of our action, and after that, call this action with some params, get array of 3 elements, and check these elements. That's all. Only unit testing, not something different. And I told that in Hanami we doesn't have any monkey patching, and it's so important for us because in Stack Overflow you can find questions like this. In this question, person asked from community, "Hey, I have Sinatra application and I have DataMapper, and why 2.wix doesn't work for me? Because he don't use Rails." And that's why I think that it's so important to see the difference between your language and your framework which you use. So Hanami, I hope that great tool does not just work correctly. Great tool teach developers some cool stuff and good principles. And Hanami is a great tool because in Hanami you can learn some things, and it's like a dependency injection. Who knows what is it? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, super, guys. If you open some Hanami guys, you will see explanation what it means. In quick review, dependency injection, it's principle when you put your dependencies into object initialization, and after that you can change dependency in testing in what you want. And in this case, if you want to, in this case, for this example, you don't need to mock your greeting class. You just put new greeting class and work with it. Hanami teach developer how to separate logic. And for example, in Hanami you can find interactors. Interactors is something like service objects, but this class returns not data. This class returns other object, and this object have state like successful or not. And also you can use some getters from this object like user, params, and for. And where we can use interactors. For example, we can use interactors in our actions. You can see here that all logic for sign up user will wrap into interactor sign up user. And after that, we just check this result is successful or not. If it's success, we can do something. If not, we do something else. For example, display errors. And also, Hanami teach developer how to use TDD in his work. For example, just open getting started guide from Hanami page, and you will see that first code of from this guide it's test code. And I'm sorry, I forgot super important thing. TDD is dead. And okay, let's talk about cons. The first cons is TDD. It's not Hanami cons. It's more about practice, and sometimes you need to test sometimes you need to create some unnecessary tests. For example, you have your object with form logic, and by TDD you need to cover this form method, which generates some HTML form by test, and sometimes it's look really weird. Other cons, it's good but not great documentation. Um, we have documentation, but we have some problems because developers want to do something else instead of what we have, and because our ecosystem is so young, uh, you need to find or you need to spend more time to finding some solutions rather than Sinatra, Rails, or something else. And last cons, it's missing gems. Just think, Rails, it's 10 or maybe 11 years old framework. Sinatra, it's 8, maybe 9 years old. Konami, just 4 years old. And that's why ecosystem is not the best. And I had this talk 1 year ago, and it was in Yeruko. And when in 1 year ago, I found that we doesn't have all the stuff like WebSockets, pagination, Webpack, GraphQL, and now I can say that we have everything instead of device, and now we're working on some authentication library for Hanami, which try to solve the biggest problem of device. It's maintains in old projects. Also, you can find other gems and libraries in awesome page of Hanami. And also you can find some blog posts about how to integrate other cool stuff like Sidekick into Hanami and etc. And if you're interested, you can check some open source projects from awesome list, or something like my project. It's a project for helping community, open source community. You can try to solve one task, and you can ask for help. I mean, create a task for other developers in your open source project. Also, you can check Octostar. Octostar is a project for easily search by your started repos from GitHub. And we have contributors Hanami org website. It's like a Rails but written on Hanami. And I can say that this site spent around 100 megabits of memory in our Heroku instance. For example, if you create a new Rails project, it will be around 2, maybe 3 megabits, 2 or 3 100 megabits of in your RAM, and you can see that Hanami is really small, and that's why we need less resources rather than other frameworks. And on this slide, you can find some contacts. It's a main page with guides and other information. It's a Gitter chat. If you have any questions, you can ask in Gitter. And also we have forum where we usually discuss some features for next version of Hanami, or some user can ask help or something else. And this is the end. Thank you. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer on this.
About 15 minutes left. So, is there any question?
Ooh.
Ooh. Ah.
Sorry, guys.
あちらのピンクのシャツの
Could you give us some examples of businesses and companies that are using Hanami on their applications production?
So yes, maybe you know about company like DNS Simple. They use Hanami for API. Also, in my job, we use Hanami, and I know that some bank startups in South America use Hanami for bank processing. So, like this.
You told us one of your targets is long-term maintenance.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about like, do you have compatibility Ruby 2.3, 2.4?
Yes, of course. You can use. Oh, it's a good question because I don't remember the early version of Ruby. But if I remember right, I had open source OSS board on Ruby version 2.1, and after and I easily switched to latest Ruby versions project and without any problems.
And the other question is similar. What is your like release cycle, or how you?
So our release cycle, we had first version in April. I can say real date. It was 6th of April, if I remember right. Just a second. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, this one. It's yes, 6th of April, and in this year. And next version 1.1 will be in October. Now we have 1.1 pre-version with new association, with new command line interface, and something else. You can check it now, and you can use it now. For example, some my job project use this new pre-version. It's a beta version, but I don't have any problems, and now we need to just update documentation, and after that we can release new version. And usually we have a half-year cycle for new version of Hanami. Thank you too.
Is there any other question?
Don't worry.
Can you show me the slide of Hanami repository?
What, I'm sorry?
Hanami repository slide. Can you show me?
Okay, I understand. I'm sorry again.
Yeah. Find underscore by underscore name is the syntax what we have disposed in Ruby 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Do you feel convenient Hanami repository? Do you feel this syntax is more convenient than current active record?
So yes, in active record we have all this method by from the box, and usually, just a second. It will be a complicated answer, but for example, we have a project, and in this project you need to find some user by name. You can use default searching only with where case and without limit and order. But what you will do if you need to change this method for, I don't know, in two different places, you'll create new method and will use it. And if you need to add order, usually you use find by name dot order, and it's for me it's wrong because you can use this logic like find by name dot order in your view, in your actions, and in Hanami, yes, we need to write all this method by hand. Maybe in start it's look like strange, and maybe it's look like, oh, I spent so many times, but I told that Hanami think more about about long-term maintenance rule. And it means that in future, for example, all your database logic will be in one place, and you will write all this logic in one class. And for example, Active Record, if I remember right, you can try to find talk from Nikita Shilnikov. He is one of core developer of ROM, and he told that typical Active Record module class have around 200 method in class methods and around 2 or maybe 300 instance methods just in one class. In ROM and in Hanami, we have less than 100 methods in class, less than 100 methods, class methods and instance methods. And that's why this object is faster and simpler. I hope I answered on your question.
We skipped the question with the man wearing pink t-shirt, so I'm so sorry.
Hello again.
Sorry, actually, because it took quite a while. I thought about the other questions I could ask you.
Okay.
But actually, I'm gonna just comment about what you said is one of the principles of
Yep.
designing the framework,
Yep.
which you mentioned it's supposed to be architecturally sane.
Yep.
And I find that pretty interesting because it's one of the things that most teams struggle with Rails
Yep.
in the long, in the long
Yeah,
run, right?
yeah.
Because although, of course, in my personal opinion, but I think that Rails framework, it is very opinionated in some
Yes.
topics, but in terms of architecture, it just enforces a few things, like a very
Yes.
basic
Yes.
starting point.
Yes.
It will be up to the teams to develop it and go forward with other things, as you say, like the interactors and etc.
Yeah.
Very interesting, and actually, like in good Rails projects, I find that the best architectural decisions are the ones that you are bringing by default.
Yep.
For instance, splitting actions
Yeah.
in separate classes, having service objects and everything. Those are things that I tried in the past, but especially in the controller layer, I struggle a little bit. And my question was about that. So you said that your action is a separate class that
Yes.
has one method that receives the params.
Yes.
But what about other things that you need from a controller, such as the actual request or cookies or sessions?
Okay,
or other
we can.
things?
So, I understand your question. Yes, we have all the stuff in actions class, and you can check Hanami Guide's action section, and you find flash messages, cookies, cache, and etc. etc. I'm sorry I don't add it to my presentation because it will be a super complicated example of action, and that's why I think it's much better if you just look by self.
So in a nutshell, the action classes are basically kind of a Rails controller class, but with a single action.
Basically, action class it's more like rec class, something like this, because in rec you take your environment with some params, for example, doing something and return special array with 3 different elements. It's status, environment, and body. In Hanami, you have a similar idea. Just a second. Oh, no. In Hanami, you have similar idea. You have one class, and in this class, we just add some sugar for working with your environment, like redirect, like caching, and etc., etc. But in general, you work with your environment and your data, and not more.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just one last
Yeah, of
thing. All the examples you gave about tests were using RSpec. So is RSpec something that comes by default?
Oh, so sorry, I forgot to update. Now we are updating our examples to RSpec. In RSpec, it will be look like expect response 0 to equal
It's
something like this. And also I created a special library for RSpec, and it's look like response or expect action call params to redirect to something, for example.
And that's the default testing tool that you have?
Yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
So no, my library you need to install by self, but in general RSpec works correct, and you can use templates for your generators, for template generations with RSpec, with Minitest, what you want.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any question?
Okay, so I have a question. I was wondering, you're saying that one of the goals of Hanami is long-term maintainability.
Yeah.
But is that, like, how do you know that is actually the case? Like, do you have any, like, how do you know that your design ideas is actually better?
It's a really good question. I had one project. It's sorry again. It's this one project. I spent 3 months to build this project, and after that I dropped this project on half of year. And 1 month ago, I tried to fix one small issue from this project, and it was super easy because I forgot everything about this project. Really, I open this project and say, oh, so many bad code here. Oh no, oh no. But anyway, it was super easy because if you open this code, and you will see that all logic in one place. And if you have some specs for this test, I mean, for these objects, small objects with isolated object, with isolated logic, you will see that you need to change only one. Usually, you need to change one place, and all work correct. And you don't have any callbacks hell, for example. In this project, I have not more models. It's like 5, maybe 6 or 7. It's a really small project, but I don't have any callbacks here. And for example, for understanding my models, I spent 1 minute per model because it's just instance method, instance method, instance method, and that's all. In my actions, I have only one public method, which calls some interactors, for example, or operation, and some validation scheme, and that's all. And in this case, it's super easy. You need to, you don't need time for understanding all this complicated and easily stuff because you have simple project, and that's all.
Okay, thank you.
About 3 minutes left, so is there any question? So I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Thank you. I think user repository is can be a god or magical class. Very long
Oh yeah,
goals.
yeah, of course.
Is that okay?
So just a second. It's a good question. Really, it's a good question. And usually, user repository or user model, it's a got object because developers do it, and you can do it in Hanami. You can do it in Rails, in Sinatra, in any projects, and it's super important to think about this problem. And if you talk about Hanami, in Hanami we have small count of gems, and usually these gems doesn't add some logic into repositories. And for this logic, you need to create service objects or something like this. And it means that your user repository, for example, it's a just class for sending some SQL queries, and that's all. But yes, you can create your special architecture in Hanami too, of course. And everywhere you will use this user repository or something like this. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I think validation class can be helped.
Yes. So yes, in general. Okay. No. I really love Rails. Don't think that I'm Rails hater, please. No, seriously. I really love Rails. Rails is super cool, and you can do amazing things with Rails. But sometimes, if you look any open source project or maybe private object projects, uh, I know only one project on Rails which use not model validation, and usually it's a problem. Why it's a problem? Because, for example, for one action you need one validation for user fields, and in other actions you need other validation for other fields, and you try to complete super base validation schema in your model, and usually it means that you use some conditional validations and etc etc, and in future these validations look like a super big validation on maybe 100, maybe not 200 lines of code, and when you try to understand how your data will validate in this schema, it will be super hard and complicated for you, because you need to remember 5, 6, 7, 10 different condition validations. You need to think, okay, if I have this flag, how my validation schema will work, and etc etc, and this is why yes, Hanami in this case it's can help drop one god object, but anyway you can use your user repository, for example, in other repositories, in other applications, and usually it's more about general architecture, not a framework.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, the time is over. So, thank you.